Hello, everybody. Welcome to Beginner Yoga. I'm so happy that you're here. This is one of my favorite courses to teach um, for many, many reasons. And first off, I'd like to introduce my dog, Jake. He's the yoga dog. He's almost always here when I'm practicing, whether I'm doing it for my personal practice or if I'm teaching for others. He just loves to be in this space and to join me. So, this is my personal space in my home during these COVID times. And welcome. The reason I love to teach this class, and I like to do an introduction first before we launch into poses, is because so often, myself included, we start yoga by following a video or YouTube or something, and we never receive the proper instruction on how to do the poses. So we're trying to look like the person on the TV or on the video. And in many cases, we can injure ourselves. We don't properly learn how to breathe. We don't understand the basics of yoga. And it causes problems. It causes us to get hurt. And then we don't like it and we blame yoga. We're saying, I can't do yoga because it makes me hurt. And it's really a healing practice. And it's not meant to hurt or harm, it's meant to heal and to help. And there are ways that we can make sure that we aren't harming. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be 100% harm free. There are times where I may take a stretch too deep and kind of pinch something off and might have an injury for a little while that I need to work through. Not uncommon, but there are reasons why that happens, and we'll talk about that. I also like to always start and say, yoga is not a religion. There are many people that are very fearful of yoga and meditation because they have been told, either through their church, their religion, or others, that it goes against their religion and that you are praying to other gods and that it's against their philosophy or their religion, if you will. Yoga is a philosophy. It is not a religion, but some religions practice yoga. So I just like to clarify, even though some religions use yoga as part of their religious experience, yoga itself is not a religion. It is a union with yourself, a uniting that mind, the body, the spirit, the breath. And it can be, if you want it to be, it can be a union with God. So you get to choose what yoga means to you. So many people are drawn to yoga because of the stress release, the stress and or the I should say the stretching of muscles that get tight through our experiences, through our lack of movement, through our stress, our tension, our jobs, sitting all day, whatever the case may be. So, whatever is bringing you here, honor and respect that. And know that my intention through this series is to step you through a lot of the basic yoga movements and to help you understand through how I was taught where the hands go, where the feet go, how should my neck be, where should I be breathing, when should I inhale, when should I exhale, how long should I hold the pose? And if I'm feeling this, what does that mean? So it's difficult to do this in a one-way format. Normally, I teach this course with students and I can give them one-on-one attention and actually help them through the poses themselves. So know that I'm available to you. If there is a pose or series of poses that you'd like individual attention, send me a message. I'll have my email listed there, and actually, I'll actually put something in on how you can reach me because that individual attention is what makes all the difference in the world. There were poses that I had been doing wrong forever until I went to yoga teacher training very long time ago. The two most popular ones that I see people do wrong were the two that I most often did wrong, and it was downward dog and triangle. And it was only because I was trying to look like the the model or the pictures that you see all over media, but I wasn't doing what was right for my body. So my request to you is to really listen to your body as you go through these poses and these different videos, because what I experience is going to be different from what you experience, which is going to be different from what everybody else experiences. The way our body is built and how we were born. So the length of my arm versus the length of my leg is going to change a position or a pose. If I have to, grab my toe and extend my leg, I'm going to have a different experience than someone who has maybe a longer leg or a longer arm. It's going to look different. The other thing too is our ligaments and our muscle structure and our bones are all different. So how our bones grind with each other is different for every person. So we're all going to experience these poses differently. For example, there are poses where when I bring my arms up, this is very, very uncomfortable. And notice I went around and came up. If I were to go this way, look at this is all the further I can go. I'm not even reaching my ear. I can't go any further because I've got bone on bone that's stopping me because of the rotation of my rotator cuff here. But if I take it wide and come up, now look, I can go up to my ears. So there are certain poses, or actually most of the poses are going to be different for everybody, and how we get in and how we get out, and where the position of our limbs are in many cases, not because we're weak or because we're inflexible, but because of our bone structure. I've been doing yoga for many, many years, but no matter how many years I do yoga, going up this way, I'm never going to get my arms up to my ears. But if I can go this way, I can. So I invite you to kind of check that out. And as we go through certain poses, I'll be able to bring that forward. Great case is typically our hips either internally rotate or externally rotate. So there are warrior poses and some other poses that are going to feel really yummy for those people that have the internally rotating hips. And there are going to be some that are really yummy for those that have externally rotating hips. Good example is Warrior 1 is more comfortable for people with internally rotating hips than externally rotating hips. Warrior 2 is more comfortable because we're opening up the hips. So those with externally rotating hips are going to be more comfortable than internally rotating hips. I dislike Warrior 1. I do it. I have to modify. I have to move my feet in a different position to be most comfortable. But I am an externally rotating hip person, which is why I can sit like this for hours, and I'm more comfortable sitting like this for hours than sitting in a chair with my feet forward. So people who like to sit like this and are comfortable, this is for those people that have those internally rotating hips. I can't do that for a long period of time. I am much more comfortable opening up my hips because my hips externally rotate. And we'll talk about that and show you ways that you can figure out which rotation you are. Some people are kind of in the middle and both either feel good or not so good, and you'll discover that for yourself. Let's see. Common question we get is Om. So anytime you mention yoga to a kid, what's the first thing they do? They sit cross-legged, they do this, and they Om. Because that's the symbol or the image that we've portrayed with yoga. Om, which is O-M, or actually it's A-U-M, Om, it's a universal sound. It's not a religion. It's not praying to a particular God. It truly is this healing sound that when you do it and embrace it can be transforming. You can feel the vibration. Everybody's different, but sometimes you can feel the vibration in your body. You can feel this buzzing in your head. It activates something within you, whether you say it or hear it or both. It is not a requirement. In most cases, I don't bring it into my classes because most of my clients are not as comfortable with the idea of it. So, one of the things with yoga and with the etiquette that I like to share is just because a teacher offers something doesn't mean that you have to do it. If there is something within you that either you don't understand it or you feel like it's a conflict of interest or your beliefs or your values or something, you do not have to do it. Okay. Another example of this would be namaste. So that's another thing that kids will do too. If you say yoga, they'll bow and say namaste. Namaste is a Sanskrit word which means the love, the beauty, the grace, everything in me honors and respects that same thing in you. So here again, it is not a religion. It is not praying to some, fictitious gods or other gods besides maybe the God that you might practice or pray to. It is a sign of respect. So just like in martial arts, where they place their hands next to each other or along their side, then they bow, it's the same thing. Hands together and namaste. This again is optional. It is not required. And oftentimes I'll say at the end of class, if you care to join me, unite the palms, release the head down, and I say a few things. And sometimes I try to weave in the theme of what we're talking about or some kind of inspirational message that comes forward that is top of mind that I want to share. And then you're welcome to bow. I have some people who don't ever say the word, they come together and they bow. And sometimes they are saying thank you. They're bowing in gratitude. And I've had special requests from people when I work with private groups to say, please don't say namaste. Can we say thank you or welcome or whatever the case may be? Another great example is I'm often invited into a Catholic school to work with kids, which I absolutely love to do. And I choose not to say namaste because I don't want to confuse anyone or have anyone alarmed, not because it's inappropriate, but because of the lack of understanding in many cases. So, long story, didn't mean to make it that long, but the idea is to just honor and respect you and what feels right for you. Okay. We typically begin a yoga class in a seated position. Not every time, but most cases. The reason we do that is we want to get grounded. When we come onto our mat, we're thinking about our grocery list, our to-do list. We probably flew onto the mat quickly, especially if we're going to a class and we're rushing to get there. You're worried about getting the right position. Do I have everything that I need? Am I forgetting anything? Did I go to the bathroom? Do I have my towel? Or is my cell phone turned off? Like all those things are racing through our heads. And how wonderful that we have a yoga practice to help us clear and not necessarily clear, but calm all that chatter. But we come to a seated position, traditionally seated on the ground or on like a pillow. So here's a meditation pillow, for example. You may have something like this, or you can use a blanket or a block. We'll talk about this in the future. But these are options for you so that you can get comfortable. The reason we would want to use something like this is if you have really tight hips, sitting on the edge of a pillow, not just smack down in the middle of it, but on the outer edge where you can tip forward a little bit and have the knees lower than the hips, that helps to relieve some of that pressure. Okay. So we'll demonstrate that when we do our first course with the actual poses, I promise. So we come to a grounded position. Now, as soon as we sit here, we're already going to start to feel some of the aches, the pains, some of the challenges that are bringing us to the practice. It's real easy for me to say, let that all go, but it's not that easy to do. The first and the most important thing about yoga is the breath. If you did nothing else but sit and breathe and not actually do the movements, you would gain so much more than someone who's done the movements but wasn't breathing properly. Okay. It's also one of the hardest things for people to grasp. People don't often people don't realize And I hear all the time, I didn't realize I didn't know how to breathe. So it takes some time to get comfortable. And I'll even call out how we breathe in and out and things. But the most important thing to remember is to allow the breath to happen naturally. We don't want to force it, because if we force things, they break. If we force the breath or we force the movement, we risk injury. And it's important to breathe, because when we hold the breath, then tension sits in. So hold your breath for a minute and notice what's squeezing in your body. Like, I immediately notice my back and my midsection starts to tense up. But as soon as I relax and flow with the breath, my muscles relax and I can feel my tailbone sinking down even more. Okay. So when we begin, you'll often hear me say, soften the belly and anchor the tail. So as soon as you soften the belly, generally the tailbone sinks down even more. And you'll hear me say, get grounded to the earth. So grounding yourself means to feel that tailbone connected to the earth or to the cushion or whatever you might be sitting on. Your brain doesn't care if you're sitting on the ground, inside, outside, on the mat, on a pillow, on a blanket, whatever. It's still going to register the same thing as you're anchored to the earth. Okay. That is a grounding sensation, not only in the body, but also in the brain. And it helps to calm you and get you centered for practice. So, you also do not need to have the legs folded in any particular way. I have some recommendations, but again, if you are super tight, you may feel more comfortable. Also, if your hips internally rotate, you might be more comfortable having the legs fully extended. Or maybe alternate one at a time. Have one in and one out, and then alternate opposite, in and out. Especially if you're starting this for the first time and you have a lot of tension that's sitting in the body, feel free to alternate however you need to. A lot of people really find relief when we start leaning up against the wall, sitting up against the wall and having that support. And we'll talk about different cushions and things like that you can use to help with that. In the yoga tradition, the ideal way to position your legs, well, let me back up. The purpose of yoga is to loosen up the tension in the body and to loosen up the tension in the mind so that you can sit for an extended period of time and meditate. That was the reason it was invented so many years ago. Okay. Because if I were to sit here and just start to meditate, I'm going to feel all the aches and pains, all the tension and where it's sitting, and my mind is going to be busy. So when we go through a physical yoga practice, we release a lot of that, and then we're more at ease to be able to sit and meditate. That is the original goal of why yoga was created. But it also has given us an opportunity to reflect on how we position the legs. So a lesson here, regardless if you are male or female, the left side of your body is your feminine side. The right side of your body is your masculine side. So it's the same if you're male or female. Okay. Most of us are right-handed when we write. And so we are dominated through that masculine side in our writing, our thinking, our analytical brain when we're in school or at work, the math, the science, and that sort of thing. The left side, that feminine side, which is aligned with the right brain, is more that artistic, creative side. So our right side is our do, and our left side is our ability to be. Okay. And when we practice yoga, we have this opportunity to balance the two. Each of us have a dominant ability or influence, if you will. And in many cases, it's masculine. And especially if we're on the go all day, working hard, working with the kids, getting the groceries, doing all those things, do. And then we come to our mat and we're like, we're exhausted. And we're like, okay, now I have to do some yoga. But the the poses and the practices are set up so that in a lot of cases you're doing the same pose twice, one on each side to balance things out. Don't be surprised if one side of your body is traditionally tighter than the other. In many cases, again, not always, but it's real for me as well. My right side, my masculine side, tends to be tighter than my left feminine side. And typically, that's an indication to me that I have been thinking and doing and pushing forward more so than allowing myself to be. But that's not the case with everybody. Some people who are more feminine and left dominated might have some tension there too for different reasons. And that's a whole nother energy discussion that I can get into at another time. But I bring all of this up because, again, left side feminine, right side masculine. Ideally, when we sit in a crisscross way, we want to bring in our energy in first. Excuse. Sorry, my throat is dry. So what that means is, if I am a female, I would bring my left foot in first. Now I know you're looking at me opposite, so this is probably looks like my right leg, but this is my left leg. That's the energy I want to draw in close to me, and then I can place the other one in front, on top, or one underneath the other to be comfortable. If I'm a male, I would bring the right foot in first and then the left. Again, I think what you're seeing is opposite, so don't get confused by that. But if you're a female, bring that left foot in first if you can. And if you're a male, bring the right leg in first. If this is uncomfortable or not natural, know that it takes time. And this is just a suggestion. It's an ideal philosophy, but it's not required, especially if you have injuries or surgeries or something that limits you. Definitely find what's best for you. But I always like to point out what the tradition says. All right. So let's begin. As we're seated nice and tall. Again, soften the abdomen, anchor that tail. And we want to position the shoulders over the hips. Now, it's very common for us to lean forward because we're accustomed to being on the computer and phones and things like that and doing everything with a hunched back. This is where we train the body the opposite. So if you can, bring the shoulders to a line over the hips and relax the arms. And if you're like me, your shoulders often live up here by the ears. And we're going to train it over time again to loosen up, drop down, and create, you'll hear me say a lot, create space between the ear and the shoulder. So let them fall while still being tall through the spine. And if you'd like, you can close the eyes. And notice your breath. Now, this can be very difficult. And the reason I say that is when we start to pay attention to ourselves, for some individuals, this can be very traumatic and activating. But ideally, we want to notice our breath. And there's different ways that we can notice it. We can notice the movement of the abdomen as the belly goes forward and back. We can notice the movement of the chest. What we want to do is we want to keep the shoulders positioned in a stable way. So we don't want to inhale, lift the shoulders, and then exhale, release down. We want it to come from the belly and the chest and go forward and back rather than up and down. And then I invite you to notice your nostrils. Our breath tends to be dominant in one nostril over the other at any particular time. And the theory and understanding is, unless we're congested, is that about every 45 minutes or so, that domination can switch. So notice which one is dominant for you. And if they feel the same and you're not sure, plug one side and then plug the other and compare. How interesting. I thought my left side was more open, but when I just did that simple exercise, I just recognized that my right side is more open. And then notice the very tip of the nose where the air enters. Notice how that air is cool, but as it releases out, you can barely feel it because it changed to the body temperature that you're experiencing. With our practice, I'll be calling the breath throughout. And you'll hear me say on your next inhale and on your next exhale. And what that means is because I said the breath is more important than the movement, always focus on the breath first, or it's more important. If you're in the middle of an inhale and you hear me say on your next inhale, don't all of a sudden exhale and then try to catch up with me. Finish that inhale, take a complete exhale, and then, as I instructed, on your next inhale, take that movement. It does mean that our movements are staggered, but again, we don't want to cheat the breath. When we cheat the breath, we tighten up the muscles and we can get dizzy and we don't get the full experience of the yoga practice. So it's important that the breath matters. So I say that, and let me explain how that comes into play. Anytime we inhale or return to center from like a twist or a bend, or anytime we reach, that's an inhale. Okay. Anytime we fold forward or we twist or we bend, that's an exhale. So here's a great example. We'll try this a few times. So sitting here, on your next inhale, float the arms to the sky. As you exhale, bring the palms to the heart. We want to breathe as we're moving. We don't want to breathe and then move, or we don't want to move and then breathe. The breath is part of the movement. So again, as you inhale, reach to the sky. As you exhale, side bend to the right. As you inhale, return to center. As you exhale, side bend left. As you inhale, return to center. Exhale the hands to the heart. Now, you may already notice that the length of my breath might be different than the length of your breath, and that's okay. Sometimes, especially with my older students, someone may have to take 2 or 3 breaths to every one of mine, and that's okay. Your breath length develops over time. And again, we don't want to force it. We don't want to change it. We want to fully experience it. So if you have to inhale, exhale, and inhale to go this slow, go right ahead. It's all okay. All I ask is that you continue to breathe. Do not hold the breath. Okay. And it'll make a lot more sense as we go along and you start to feel the flow of things as I'm calling the breath. And I just want to bring that to your attention now. Another thing with etiquette, and I like to share this in case you get so comfortable that you're going off to a yoga studio soon. Your yoga mat is your personal space. Your energy, your sweat, your tears, your joy, your happiness, your everything gets infused into your mat. It's a very, very private bonding experience. So when you walk into a yoga studio and you place your mat, most people, if they've been trained correctly, are under the awareness that only you are the person to step on your mat. So if you lay your mat down and people are walking around the room, hopefully they are walking around your mat and not on your mat. So that also means be respectful of everybody else's mat. Do not walk on someone else's mat. As a teacher, sometimes I may approach somebody and I may need to step on their mat in order to help them with an adjustment or something, but I always will ask, may I step on your mat? Because it's very private, it's very personal, and it's also that space issue. We want to have that wall, or we want to have that comfort zone. And if I creep into somebody else's energy and into their comfort zone, it can be very disruptive, and it can throw people off balance and can really be disruptive with practice. So just be respectful. Just like if you're a golfer, you don't stand in line between where the golf ball is and the hole of yours or anybody else's. Same thing. Be very respectful. Your mat is your energy, your personal connection to your practice, and respect and honor that in you, and respect and honor that in yourself or in others as well. So, all right. I know I've thrown a lot at you at this first video. I'll take some time and see if there's anything that I forgot, and I'll go ahead and we'll launch that second video with those items and anything that comes along. The process will be to go through some starting poses that we would do in a warm up. That will be the next video. And then we'll continue to grow from there. We will use the warm up exercises in each of the videos as a proper warm up. And then we'll get into some more in-depth poses. So the intention of this is to walk you through. Again, if at any point you have questions or you want me to visually see you in the poses to offer suggestions, and you could talk about like this hurts or this doesn't feel right, or what can I do about maybe this injury, like I have a wrist injury or an ankle that I broke years ago and things like that. All those special cases we can take offline and create some private time to go through. So don't be afraid to ask if that's something that's of interest to you. All right, let's bring the hands to the heart. As you exhale, lower the head, and imagine you can look into the hands and into your heart. Celebrate this gift that you gave yourself. Stepping into the unknown, into a space that can be very, very challenging. It can be overwhelming. It can be, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, intimidating. That's the word I'm looking for. Many people are intimidated by yoga. And I just want to thank you and applaud you for taking this first step in a very non-threatening way to get comfortable with your body, get comfortable with your mind, your breath, and the practice. And so that you can take it forward however you're meant to do for yourself and for others. I thank you for joining me. And if you care to bow with me and join me in a namaste, I bow to you. Namaste. And then, my friends, I commonly bring the thumb knuckles to my forehead. Again, this is just something I do. It doesn't mean you have to do it. But as soon as I do, I remind myself to have kind thoughts. And then I bring the thumb knuckles to my lips to remind myself to have kind words. And I bring the thumb knuckles to my heart to remind myself to have kind action. So I invite you to do the same. Thank you. Congratulations. And I'll see you soon. Bye.